Hello, this is Brian from the Justkickin podcast. Unfortunately, Josh is unable to be with us today, but today I'm chatting with Dan Abrams. Dan is the global sports psychologist working alongside leading players, teams, coaches, and organizations across the world. Dan is also the author of 3 books, and he will be presenting at the Next Gen Coaches 24-hour virtual conference hosted by Inspire Coach Education on July 29th, 2017. 24 presentations in 24 hours. I encourage you to go to Inspire Coaches Ed for more details on how you can get access to Dan's presentation and 23 other presenters from world leaders in coaching and coach education. Well, with all that said, Dan, how are you today?
I'm really well, Brian. I'm even better for having the opportunity to be interviewed by yourself once again. I'm delighted to be involved in this online conference, and yeah, really looking forward to it. I've got a few things to say, so yeah, all is good.
And before we obviously get to the topic that you'll be discussing on the coaches conference, as you said, we chatted episode 81. What a fantastic episode that was. And, you know, I left that episode with just so many more questions and thoughts that I wanted to use with my team. And I will tell you, I ran out there and I started putting together match scripts for players. And it actually, interestingly, worked very well. Hopefully we can chat a little bit about that today as well. But I wanted to ask you first and foremost, why do we not have more sports psychology education out there for coaches? Because I think that's where we might be missing the boat.
I think more resources are coming through now. I think there's been historically a lack of resources because historically, traditionally, soccer has been seen as a physical game, a game of technique, a game of tactics, and there hasn't been an appreciation of the holistic nature of the game, the psychological and the social sides of the game. So I do think there's that. I think people, whether it's supporters or even coaches, are very good at looking at the external. You know, they see the players, they see the ball, they see them line up in certain positions, they see them run around, and we've become very, very good at instructing, at looking at and instructing the external, but not so good at thinking about the internal that drives the external. Maybe it's because historically we've been scared of making the game more complicated than perhaps we feel it needs to be. But I think historically it's been seen as a technical, a tactical, a physical game. But what we now know are those things are heavily mediated by the psychological, by the social sides of the game. And I think that there is, especially with the onset of the internet, you know, online resources, there's so much more possibility. There's so many more possibilities for coaches to tap into those resources. You know, whether it's through social media, whether it's through blogs, there's so much more information out there. And I think this information revolution is creating a revolution, or is going to create a revolution in sports coaching, and specifically soccer coaching, whereby coaches can access these resources. Clearly, Brian, to use a sports psychologist requires money, doesn't it? It requires a certain amount of monetary resources, and that's not available or accessible to everybody, possibly other than the biggest clubs in the US, or even over here in England and in Europe. The biggest Premier League clubs and the Championship clubs who have the monetary resources to do that. So I think there's a twofold thing here, whereby a lot of coaches have to be industrious. They have to go online, share resources, read resources, and become passionate about this side of the game off their own back.
I almost think we need that retreat where coaches can go and actually be a part of someone like yourself for 10, 15 days, because even though we read what's on the websites, even if we go and read books, like your fantastic books that you've wrote, the issue, though, becomes the application piece, taking the theory to the practical world. And I think sometimes we miss that. And we go in with these cliches and metaphors that maybe don't make sense, or we're repeating something we've seen on the internet, and it's not as impactful on the players. So what do you think is the missing piece from the theory to the practice that coaches maybe can use to upscale themselves?
Look, I think it's two things. Okay, I think the first thing to say is having really simple tools, techniques, philosophies that coaches can use and utilize out on the training pitch, during sessions, before sessions, after sessions, you know, whether it's within an activity or whether it's just communicating with players. Coaches need simple tools and techniques, and I think historically in psychology, I wouldn't blame soccer for this. I blame us. I blame the psychologists, because we either get far too theoretical. We talk about the inverted U hypothesis and systematic desensitization, and coaches go, well, what the hell is that? I just want to help my players progress and I want to help them perform. And then we might go at the other end of the scale where we get a bit fluffy and we go, you can achieve anything, and a bit self-helpy, and really that happy medium is saying, look, we're not going to ignore the science. We're going to teach you, the coach, the science in a very digestible way, but we're going to give you, you mentioned match script. I also work on things like game face, using controllers, squashing ants being automatic negative thoughts. I've made it my sort of lifetime goal is to help coaches, help players as well, but help coaches with very simple tools and techniques. Now, the second thing I'd say here, Brian, actually links us to the Inspire conference, which is, I think that we in psychology have to help, because this is what I'm going to talk about in the Inspire conference. I think we in psychology have to be not just better at delivering simple tools and techniques, but helping coaches understand that soccer is a psych-social game. I think whether you talk about young soccer coaches or even some seasoned soccer coaches, they're too quick to think about the X's and the O's. They're too quick to think about soccer is a game of tactics, technique, and physicality. When actually, look, they're there. Denying them is like denying the presence of the sun and the moon and the sky. Nobody denies that tactics, technique, and physicality are a big part of what you do. But actually, soccer is about learning. Soccer is about mood and motivation and consistency of movement. Soccer is about managing personalities and behaviors. You know, when I say soccer coaching. Soccer is a team game. It's interpersonal and intrapersonal skills. So what I say, and again, this links us to what I'm going to be talking about at the conference, which I'm really looking forward to doing, is I say that the psych and the social side, the psychology and the social side, drive those other areas, the technical and the tactical and the physical side. I think we've got to convince you guys, the coaches, that this is a fact. I don't like using that word fact, but it really is a fact that I want to help coaches understand you need to walk onto that soccer pitch with psych and social in mind. And too many, when they sit down and they think about their sessions, when they walk onto that pitch, they're thinking X's and O's. They're thinking strength, speed, stamina. They're thinking cones. They're thinking poles. They're thinking drills. They're not thinking psych-social. So simple tools and techniques, and more coaches thinking psych-social.
Now, one of the areas that we started to dive into a bit when we had you on the show before was the language that coaches use. And I actually have an interesting question, I think. I'm not sure if I'm going to word it correctly, but how does language impact what we're doing with players? And specifically, if we think about this from, if I use language to verbally say something about the game to a player, sometimes the player's not listening, right? They may not hear me, and maybe has to come through a demonstration or me showing them. But how impactful is a negative connotation coming out of my mouth in language terms if I say to you, man, that just wasn't done well today, but yet they hear you there, but they don't hear you maybe when you're saying something to them about the game? Why is there such a difference with how players take in what you say about them, but also what you say about how you want them to learn?
Yeah, I think there's a few interesting things there. I always talk about, when it comes to your sessions, activity, approach, attitude. The 3 A's, I like to call it. And let me briefly break these down. You know, activity is the activity that you're delivering, whether it's a games-based activity, whether it's a drill, whether it's constraints-based, whatever activity you're delivering, a passing, shooting, whatever it might be. And I think what you're asking me there is more to do with the approach and the attitude. So with regard the attitude, I think it's important for coaches to be able to communicate effectively, and do so whether you call it in a positive manner or a questioning manner. You know, a lot of coaches who might go in, who in a session might intervene and might say, I didn't like what you did there. You need to be doing this. You did A, you need to do B. Might be better served to go in a more positive way. So actually saying, I saw you do this. So you're affirming what you've seen. What made, so now we're going to ask a question, what made you do this? What did you see that directed you to try to do this, to pass that way, to take the shot? What might have been a more effective approach in that moment? What might you have done? So actually, rather than judging what the player did and interacting negatively with that player, I think giving that player feedback and then asking questions and empowering the player to come up with their own answers is a much more positive way of delivering your coaching sessions. And let me define positive. What I'm not saying is every coach needs to go around telling players that, praising them and telling them what they've done is wonderful and brilliant and marvelous. I think a coach just has to ask themselves, what is positive coaching? For me, positive coaching is empowering players to become involved in the coaching process and holding them accountable to deliver on what has been discussed. So I repeat again, I think it's providing feedback and affirming to the player what you've seen. That's a positive thing. It's then questioning and asking, what was it that player, why did that player make that decision? Why did he or she make that pass? Why did he or she make that decision? What did they see? What were they thinking? And then it's it might be offering choice, offering alternatives, or empowering the player to come up with a different solution. That to me is positive coaching, Brian, rather than praising. But equally, what you're doing there is not only getting the player involved and working at a deeper level of learning, you're also being positive as a coach. That to me is a great way to approach your coaching and have a great coaching attitude.
And it's funny, you know, I've caught myself doing this, and this is a particular question, and I think all coaches, this is going to resonate with them at some level. How much of a stimulus response coach could get in the way of what you want players to learn? In other words, if a player says something to me and I quickly jarg out an answer, or I quickly say something that I haven't really thought through, and it could come off not the way I wanted it to, and instead of processing and thinking about it for a minute and coming up with an authentic answer or question, how important is it that coaches evaluate what players are saying to them without hurry up and giving responses back to them immediately, so that maybe they can have a better question, as you talked about?
I think it's important, and for me, look, first things first, what we're talking about here is coaching on the go, coaching on the run. And you know what, Brian, this is where, and I think we said this when we spoke last time, is coaches have to give themselves permission to get this wrong, because this is the hardest bit. If you're going to be a world-class coach, or the very, you know, if we think good, great, world-class, if you want to be a good coach, if you want to be a great coach, if you want to be a world-class coach, whatever you want to do, whatever time gives you the ability to do, okay, then you have to give yourself permission to get this wrong, because coaching on the run is so tough. Okay, as you say, sometimes your responses are going to be instinctive, sometimes you just don't have time to think. So Look, give yourself permission to get this wrong. But this is the beauty of putting psychosocial first. When you sit down and you prepare, you plan your session, I want you to think about, and this isn't going to cover every eventuality, I want you to think about the challenges the players are going to bring to the table during the session. You know, rather than just doing the X's and O's, rather than just writing down what your session is going to be, I want you to think about, what do I want my players to learn? What little idiosyncrasies do the players bring? Well, who are the challenging players? Who are the ones who are going to question? Which is good. You want players questioning. What do I think they might ask me? How might I react and respond? By doing that, that's really effective planning. By doing that, you give yourself a better opportunity to respond in the correct manner. Now, that's only giving you a better opportunity. When you're in the action, when you're coaching on the run, absolutely, look, non-directive, directive coaching. Don't think for 1 minute this just needs to be feedback, questioning, abdicating. Yes, we now live in a coaching world, where we're starting to understand that asking questions and empowering players is more impactful from a learning perspective than the command and control style of coaching of yesteryear. However, coaching on the run is so complex that there's got to be a time when you tell, when you instruct. So it's coaching on the run. Effective coaching run is a combination of non-directive and directive coaching. And if you think there's a time where you've got to get directive, then get directive. If there's a question that a player asks you where you've got to say, look, you know what? You carry on going. I'll speak to you about that point later. It's a really good question. Let's have a conversation about that after training, so be it. If you feel in that moment you've got to blurt something out to give that player an answer that you retrospectively feel about a minute later, oh, wow, I got that wrong, that's okay. Have a conversation with that player afterwards, and put what you made wrong right afterwards. So look, give yourself permission to get it wrong. So prepare for the challenges, prepare for the questions. Coaching on the run is a combination of directive and non-directive coaching. Give yourself permission to get it wrong, and then afterwards put it right if you have done, and then afterwards reflect. If you reflect on what went right, what went wrong, what needs to go better next time, you'll get better and better and better as a coach.
Now, if you have this player that's just not performing well, and we've analyzed every aspect, right? Technically he's good, tactically just not, something's not right, you know, and we're going to refer to it as some type of confidence or, you know, mental toughness or whatever vernacular you want to put to it. However, what are the biggest mistakes that coaches are making when dealing with that type of player during a season? Maybe it's a championship season.
Yeah, the best answer I can give you there, because obviously this is a generic question, and often quite often the answers to these kind of things lie in the individual specific nature of these challenges, is that don't see this as coaching mistakes. See this as what we can add to the coaching toolbox. I think when a coach, and I come back to what I'm going to talk about at the Inspire conference, is if a coach goes out there, or when a coach goes out there and has some really effective psych-social, whether you call them interventions or strategies or techniques, that he or she is going to use during a coaching session, you can envelope those as you train technique, as you train the understanding of tactics, as the players are engaging in a physical session. So, you know, if a player, let's take a striker for instance, who is good technically day to day, but perhaps he's going through a spell where he or she is missing opportunities, and you look at their body language and it looks a bit flat, and you look at them, you can see that internally they're complaining at themselves. For me, it's not such what mistake is the coach making then. It's that that coach hasn't been holistic enough, hasn't necessarily created sessions whereby he or she has had the game faces and the match script and the self-talk and the body language and all these tools and techniques that he or she can use within their session from the beginning. So what I would say is that make sure within your coaching sessions from day one, you are emphasizing through your communication, I want to see great body language no matter what. Come on, let's talk to ourselves effectively. You know, just a 5-minute little chat with the group about what great, energetic, confident self-talk looks like will make a massive difference 2 months, 3 months, 4 months down the line in your season. Using some of the tools and techniques I talk about in my soccer academy and in my books, like match script and game face and using controllers, can help. So I always say, look, from day one, insist on great body language. Then 2 months down the line, if a striker's missed a few chances and they're starting to look a bit dodgy with their confidence, you can just remind them, you know, come on, John, come on, Mary, I want to see great body language now. We've worked on that. I'm insisting on that. You can almost command style the soft skills. Think about that for a second. We don't like that command and control style anymore for justified reasons, because that's not the way people learn. But I tell you what, if you're going to command style anything into your sessions, insist on seeing great body language, insist on great communication, insist on helping each other out through communication, insist on everybody seeing great body language, on great self-talk. That's where you can command style, in my opinion. So it's not so much mistake, it's do this from day one. And that's what I'm going to talk about at the Inspire conference.
That's what I love chatting about with you, Dan. You put such a great positive spin on it, because you went from mistakes to toolbox adding. So basically adding more things to our toolbox. And I think that's where coaches get it wrong. That's where experience helps us, doesn't it? Because over time, we've worked with individuals like yourself, or we've had opportunities to blow things up, make mistakes, do things wrong, that hopefully we reflect back upon and say, hey, let's get this right the next time.
And can I just interject there, Bron, because just a second, because you said a really interesting word, experience. And yet so many coaches are so passionate about, as I become more experienced, I understand more about tactics. I understand I have more little drills and exercises in my big folder here, and I go online and I go on Twitter and I get other drills and things off coaching. Now, fantastic. I'm not demonizing that. I'm passionate about coaches being the best that they can be, and clearly that means in part expanding your folder of activities. No problem with that. But can coaches see their expansive experience developing in terms of the psychological and the social side? I am better at helping players play confidently. I'm better at helping players learn when they're not confident, when they're at 60%. I understand learning now. I understand how to help players learn. And that takes 2, 3, 5, 10, 20 years to get that. So experience should revolve around psychosocial as well as technical, tactical, physical.
Well, before we finish up with a little bit about your presentation, and we've said it 3 or 4 times, and I mentioned at the very beginning I was going to ask you about it again, but could you disclose a little bit and talk about match script, what that actually meant, and why you use it, and how is it so powerful for coaches?
Yeah, look, I talk in my books and I talk at my online soccer academy about this thing, a match script. And very, very basic, very simply, a match script is 2 or 3 actions, behaviors that players can control, very important word, control, that he or she will run onto the pitch and focus on as they train and especially as they play. So let's break that down. There are 2 or 3 actions or behaviors, so specific things, and those actions or behaviors can be related to the technical, tactical, physical, and psychological sides of the game that they can control. So rather than I'm going to win my headers today, it's I'm going to jump strong in the air. I'm going to be positive with my jumps into the air to give myself the best chance to win my headers. So positive jumps to win headers. Rather than I want to score today, it's a non-stop movement to find space. Rather than play with confidence, it's great non-stop positive body language. So it's things that players can control that are scaffolded down so they get to the heart of what they can do to give themselves the best chance to play at their best. Control is the important word here. And many coaches, and we come back to how do coaches help players focus? How do you help players play with confidence? Developing a match script is one way to do this. You know, too often players run onto the pitch and they're just trying to play well, or they want to be man or woman of the match, or they want to score, or they want to keep a clean sheet. I always hear, I want to score, I want to keep a clean sheet. What are you going to do that? What things are going to help you to do those, to achieve those things? So they're what we call in sports psychology, we call them process goals. Rather than having performance goals, complete my passes, score a goal, or outcome goals, win the match, be man or woman of the match, process goals, things that they can control. This gives them the best chance to perform towards their best, but it also gives players a great chance to focus. When they've made a mistake, come back to your match script. If it's not going so well, come back to your match script. Remind yourself of your match script. It can aid communication between coach and player. You know, come on, want to see what's in your match script today. What's in your match script? Empower players to make their own match script. Help them develop their match script. You can co-create. What great way to enhance your relationship with a player. What great way to help them become students of their game and students of the game. And that's what I love about psychology, is that that's where I've taken it. It's rather than it's just about confidence or it's just about concentration. Actually, you can take a psychological tool like a match script and it works on confidence. It works on communication. It works on concentration. It works on all those little psychological areas. That's what a match script is.
Without digging in personally, would you be able to share with us a story of a match script you've used with a player at the highest level?
Absolutely. And as I'm sure your audience can appreciate, you know, being a psychologist, a lot of my work is confidential, but I'm very lucky whereby I have several players who really enjoy sharing their story. And one of those players, he gave me permission to write about his story in Soccer Tough 2. And that's Yannick Bolasie, who last season got a £25 million move from Crystal Palace to Everton. He's a great guy, and we've been working 3 or 4 years. And he's a winger, as people will know. And one of his big challenges, and I think a challenge for any winger, especially at the very top level, is patience. You know, you're not always making an impact, or you don't feel you're making an impact on the wing. You know, and for a big part of our work when he was at Crystal Palace, because, you know, at that time, the reality was Crystal Palace were the newbies in the Premier League. And a lot of times they conceded possession to the opposition. So he wouldn't see much of the ball. And at times he would say to me, Dan, I'm getting so frustrated. You know, I'm not getting the ball. I want to make an impact. I want to be the best that I can be. So there were a number of match scripts that Yannick had, but one of those was be patient, always show great body language, stay lively and alert. And another one was act Ronaldo. So I know that sounds a little bit corny and a bit cheesy, but honestly, when he thinks of that player, it was bang, yep, okay, come on. How can I impact the game when I'm off the ball, when I'm not seeing the ball? How can I be the best teammate? Is it where I'm looking? Always be ready to make an impact. I might not feel I've made an impact, but Ronaldo would always be ready to make an impact. So it was those kind of little things that he ran onto the pitch, no matter how the first half went or the first 70 minutes, he would keep saying those things to himself to keep himself in the game. And you know what? I'll finish on a little story here with regard to him, and he doesn't mind me saying this. The very infamous, I don't know if your listeners will remember this, Liverpool or Crystal Palace versus Liverpool. A couple of seasons ago, Liverpool went to Selhurst Park. They were a couple of games away from winning the title. They needed a couple of wins. They were 3-0 up through 70 minutes at Crystal Palace. And throughout that game, Yannick so wanted to make an impact, but he had to keep reminding himself, stay patient, What would Ronaldo do? Stay lively, stay on my toes, stay alert. He kept talking to himself in an effective way. Yes, these players do talk to themselves. They have to. And they were 3-0 down, 70th minute. He'd done nothing in the game. And then suddenly ball came up to him, broke away, crossed the ball. I think it was Gale who scored. So he scored a goal, and then there was another assist I think Yannick got, and he made a big impact on that last 20 minutes. And if he had let that, he said to me, if I'd let that first 70 minutes get to me, if it had emotionally got to me, if it would have sapped my confidence, I would have been distracted. So think control, concentration, confidence, think of those things, okay? It was all, he managed it all wrapped up in that match script, because it helped him to keep talking to him about what his responsibilities were, how he had to keep being, how he had to stay focused. So that's the kind of impact it can have. And that works for an under 8, if you just have one little play in their match script. It can work for an under 15. Maybe you can move up to 2 little plays. It can work at the very top end with the guys who play, you know, in the world, the big games that make a big difference to the biggest leagues in the world. So there we go.
What, Dan? You've impacted my day already, and I'm just beginning over here. It's 8 o'clock or 8:30 or whatever it is, but. Man, this has been a wonderful 30-minute conversation. I wish we could keep going, but I don't want to steal all the thunder here. Your presentation is the psychosocial model of coaching, and you've alluded to it several times within the conversation we've had today of some of the things. But could you give a little summary just real quickly on what that's going to entail and what listeners and viewers will be able to take away from your presentation?
Yeah, very briefly. Look, to me, traditional coaching models, and please, I'm really not, there's brilliant coaching models out there. I'm just going to offer an alternative perception of coaching, a coaching model. And I say perception because often when I put the slides up in front of coaches, when I've done this historically, a lot of coaches, not every coach, but a lot of coaches have said to me, you know what, Dan, I've never seen coaching, that kind of, that graphic. I've never seen it like that. I've never thought about it like that before. That really does. I see things differently now. And it's not to demonize any other model, okay? But all I've done is I've deconstructed the traditional sort of, whether you call it a 4-corner model, but a technical, tactical, technical, physical, psychological and social corners, if you like, and I've deconstructed that into a graphic that displays a graphic more towards the psychology and the social driving the other areas, the technical, I put in the tactical and the physical sides. And I want to talk about that. I'm going to talk about that and just being more, as a coach, more oriented towards the psychology and the social are the big deals here. They're about the learning and the communication and my underpinning philosophies. They're about mental skills. They're about my self-management as a coach. They're about leadership and followership and the social need, the emotional intelligence side of coaching. And so I'm saying to coaches, put that first. Put that first. If you want to be the best that you can be, put that first. Nobody's denying the other areas. So that's what I'm going to talk about, and I'm going to put more meat on the bone of as to what that psychology and the social side looks like. I've only got 18 minutes in this presentation, so it's going to be short and sweet. But you know, but back with, you know, with my books, I put more meat on the bone, and my online soccer academy, I put more meat on the bone, and lots of stuff on my blog at danabrahams.com. So, you know, it's the Inspire conference. There's some great speakers. They're all going to be you know, disseminating their message, and they're all great messages, and part of my contribution is going to be that psych-social model. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Well, Dan, I can't thank you enough. Your passion and your energy comes out in the inflection in your voice. It's amazing. And I'm honest, I'm going to go work out, I think, after this, just because it's been amazing. But people can check out the episode that we had with you, episode 81, I think, with where we had a chat. Obviously, this comes now, and encourage encourage everyone to go and watch your presentation, get the delegate pass, and go to this Next Gen Coaches 24-hour virtual conference. So thank you so much and for your generosity to come on today for 30 minutes and chat with myself. And unfortunately, Josh missed it. I'll fill him in a little bit on it later.
Brian, enjoy your 10K run. Now you're going to go and work out. I might go on one myself because I'm quite pumped now. So, but no, really looking forward to it, guys. And I'll see everybody there.